run into a kind of the staple of every guitar player's rig, just a normal Boss DS-1 distortion. The cool thing about and I know that there's like bass distortions out there, and at least I'm told, but I've always just used that just because I think I borrowed it from a guitar player and never returned it.
Typical bass player.
Yeah, I kind of adopted it, but the cool thing about the Boss distortion, which I can't seem to get in a lot of other distortion pedals, is kind of like what I was saying before, where you lose a lot of your low end when you put it on your distortion with bass. And I've actually never really had that much of a problem with the Boss distortion for some reason.
Which you'd think the bass pedals would compensate for that, would be more designed toward that, but they aren't.
Well, the thing that I found is that they do keep the low end in, but then you lose clarity, and it's just more of a fuzz bass, which is cool. I mean, it's very David J. But for the style that we do, I need to keep that kind of bite in there as well. So that's where that Boss distortion comes in. So from there, this is just a B2R. This is kind of their, it's their least expensive of all the models, and I bought it just because I bought this is a 215 cabinet, and I bought the two at the same time, and had actually didn't really have enough. Wanted to get like a nice SVT head and whatever, and I was like, well, let me just get the B2R for now, and I'll upgrade later. And I actually love it.
Right. So as long as it's good, why upgrade? I mean, you don't need to upgrade just to like impress people. Look, I got an SVT.
Exactly, and that's I think like you kind of have that mindset like, well, it's not going to sound as good or whatever, but I think it sounds great. I love it. I think if someone were to give me one of the B4s or something like that, I would probably certainly try it. But I'm pretty happy with this. I have no plans to upgrade it anytime soon.
It's like I can always predict the answer to what's the worst thing about these Ampegs, and it's like having to carry them.
Yeah. Boy, is
they
that
sound
true.
great, and they have a particular sound. But boy, try lugging one of those up the stairs,
Which I've done many times. Upstairs, downstairs, yeah. Which is we get to this bad boy, the 215 cabinet. I opted for the 215s. I made them. I had gone to Guitar Center to buy it, and they don't carry them in stock typically. They'll carry like the 810s and the 610 or whatever. And they tried to give me a really good deal on the 810. I was like, no, I want a really good deal, but I want it on the 215. And sure enough, they went and ordered one for me, and a couple weeks later I picked it up. And the thing about, especially with bass and low end, you're pushing really, the frequencies are, you got to really push the air, and you need bigger speakers to do that. You have sine waves that are much bigger than the sine waves from, higher end instruments. So I've always been a big fan of 215s. A friend of mine used to have a 215 cabinet, and I just remember listening to his cabinet versus some of the other cabinets that I had heard other people playing, and I just you could definitely hear the difference. And the cool thing is that you don't sacrifice any of the high end as well, with the 215. But I feel in reverse you do kind of sacrifice some of the low end, and it's not like a drastic thing. I think it's more of a it's just more of a preference kind of thing.
One of the things you say is you're talking about pushing the air, and it just seems like these days as like kind of advances in technology and whatever, you can get small guitar amps that still sound pretty good. They may not have a lot of power, but a lot of times, especially live, not especially live, but in the studio or live, you're going to mic them. You're going to so it doesn't really matter that much. But for some reason, you got to have something big still for the bass. They don't have a big. Yeah. They don't have a booming speaker that's the size of your hand.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like for the studio, there's a variety of different, speaker sizes, types, models, whatever. But this is a live cabinet. Right. I use it in the studio too, but I'm certainly on stage a lot more than we are in the studio.
Right. That would be true, hopefully, of most people.
Yeah. So, so that being the case, I think for a live situation is when you really need to, especially with bass, because it's kind of, I was a drummer for years, and never paid attention, was an aspiring guitar player for a while, before kind of finding my instrument being bass. And, it's one of those things that even sometimes on shows that we play, I'll hear it, a videotape of it back, and, the bass is always, sometimes it's just low in the mix or whatever. So the nice thing about this is that, I can always, there's certainly no problems with stage volume, and just getting the sound out there.
So you don't need the bass in the monitors when you're standing in front of that.
Absolutely not.